This is Dre Alvarez, aka Nerd Numbers, giving a pre-intro intro. Figured I actually didn't explain what I was doing in this video until way late in the original recording, which is this is me scoring 23 goals in the very, very first legal game of Blitzball you can play outside of storyline in the game Final Fantasy X. I'm somewhat annoyed in my recording. As you can see, I have the little cursor. This was recorded using the Steam version of Final Fantasy X, using the OBS software to stream it to Twitch. And so I didn't realize that my mouse was over it when I was playing. I just had a blind spot. I mean, obviously, it's not as if this is some official speedrun or anything. And, you know, I'm not even going to deny any shenanigans because, as you'll hear in my explanation, how I am capable of doing this is using a very silly and funny trick. But anyway, 23 goals in the very, very first game of Blitzball against the Kilika Beasts. I explain the strategy more, and we'll probably be doing more videos in this vein in the future. Thanks. Hey, this is Dre Alvarez, aka Nerd Numbers, and I'm going to be presenting today part one of a series I hope to do called Moneyballing Blitzball. For those that do not know, Blitzball is a mini-game in the hit game Final Fantasy X, released in 2001 for the PlayStation 2. So this is about as trivial and meaningless thing as possible. However, it fits in with one of the niche areas I like to work in, which is sports analytics. And just as kind of a general overview, analytics really just means numbers, and the prevalence of sports analytics is really just using numbers and statistics to make decisions in sports. And so these kind of rules and applications can be applied kind of universally, and it really actually works well to the game of Blitzball in the game Final Fantasy X. So Blitzball is a fictitious kind of water polo, soccer-ish sport that you are able to play. And it's actually part of your character's backstory. Your character is a star player in this, in the fictitious Xanarkin, Dream Xanarkin. By the way, spoilers in all of these. If you haven't played, just is what it is. And that wasn't even that big of a spoiler unless you decide to go Google it, which would be odd. Why are you watching a video on Final Fantasy X and then Googling up spoilers? It's 20 years old. All right, so anyway, the basic point being, this is a mini game that essentially allows you to be a general manager and player of a fictitious sports team. And there are actually prizes on the line. So using analytics, you can actually determine the optimal strategies and optimal methods to play Blitzball, which is just something in my wheelhouse and kind of a side project I want to work on. Now, this first video is more of a kind of proof of concept silly thing that wasn't really necessary, but I am heartily enjoying. So allow me to explain. In the game Final Fantasy X, really you are only forced to play one game of Blitzball, and it's story based. The story goes, your character Tidus is kind of lost, has amnesia, but they know he's a Blitzball player. So they are going to deliver him to a big Blitzball tournament with the hopes that he'll meet someone that remembers who he is. Incidentally, the people that are trying to help you out are a Blitzball team, or one of the characters is a captain of a Blitzball team, and he's basically saying, hey, if you come with us, we can see if you know someone. Additionally, my team's been really bad and can't win. You're a star player. Do you want to come and help us out and win this tournament? So that's the story narrative. And then, of course, if you play the game right, you can win the game, which I did. But there is then a little hack related to that. And this hack allowed me to score 23 goals in the very, very first Blitzball game you play, non-storyline related. And so, just to be clear, my goal in this video, which I accomplished and think I can improve on, is I wanted to score the most goals in a Blitzball game immediately after the only story-based Blitzball game. So basically the very first Blitzball game, doing no leveling up, doing no recruiting, to just score as many goals as possible. Now, as you can see, that no leveling up line is a bit of a misnomer with what I did, because the very, very first Blitzball game you play is a tournament game. So in the game Final Fantasy X, the Blitzball games are two types. Basically a regular league, so you play in a league that goes 10 games. You play every other team 2 times. And then at the end of the league, the team with the highest number of wins and draws wins the cup, essentially. And for that, you can go to overtime, but you can end the game in a draw. You go to overtime. If nobody wins in overtime, then it's just a draw. However, there's also tournaments. These are 3-round, tournaments. They're named properly. However, in a tournament, overtime is never ending because there has to be a winner to decide who wins the tournament because it's an elimination. And just so happens your story-based narrative is the finals of a tournament. And so you can keep that game going forever, which is what I did. I kept that tournament game going forever and leveled up my center, Letty, to level 99. Complete waste of time, useless, but again, I'm doing this for fun, so it is what it is. And in doing that, I basically was sure I could set myself up to be in a fantastic position against the weakest team in the league, the Kilika Beasts, to score a ton of goals. And that's obviously what this video is. That's what you're watching. It's about 15 minutes long, and I'm not going to talk the whole time, but you've probably seen me score 10 to 15 goals at this point. I'm recording this audio track separate from the video, but did want something to go along with it as you're watching. And just kind of explain what I did ahead of time and what the fun is. So essentially, you can use the tournament game that is storyline based to level up your characters. Now the rough part is one of your characters, Titus, in story leaves the game, so you can't level him up. Another one of your characters, Waka, retires after the game. So really there are only 2 offensive players, Letty and Datto, that are worth leveling up, and honestly, Letty isn't really worth it beyond what I'm doing here, trying to beat the tar out of a team immediately. The other annoying part, though, is in Final Fantasy X, to level up, you basically want charged attacks. The way you level is by either doing shots, passes, or tackles, and all of these are a base rate where you basically get 2 experience points for doing any of those actions. But you get more experience if you do a charged version, because there are things like Venom Shot, Nap Shot that can inflict status and increase the effectiveness of those things. And only one of your characters, Letty, has a charged pass. And so he leveled much, much quicker than Datto. And I decided not to level Datto all the way up to 99 because my assumption was I would only be using Letty to try and score with this method, which kind of happens, but I'm now looking and realizing that it's possible I wanted Datto leveled all the way up, and I'll explain. So my goal here is to score the optimal number of goals in a game, and I think I get pretty close. On my initial calculations, I basically thought that you were limited to roughly 12 goals in a half, which would be about 24 a game. I think it's possible that it could be 25 or 26, and I'll explain some of the rationale. If you catch the ball immediately in a face-off, these happen twice, once at the beginning of the game, once at the beginning of the half, you can immediately shoot the ball, and if your character is strong enough, the ball will just go in, you'll score. And that takes roughly 14 to 15 seconds. Now, obviously, you could see, ideal world, if you got the ball every single time you scored, that'd be about 4 times a minute. There's 5 minutes and a half. So you could score about 20 goals a half or 40 goals overall. That's probably the upper bound, obviously, on possible scoring. But the problem comes down that the rules of the game basically say whoever gets scored on immediately gets the ball back. So that's not really possible. Second thing is, if you manage to meet the opponent midway and attack them and get the ball back and then shoot immediately, that takes around somewhere between 20 and 25 seconds. I had it as kind of 25 seconds was my thinking, and so wouldn't be hard math. 25. You could score 4 times in 100 seconds. There's 300 seconds and a half, so that would be 12 goals. And I actually do accomplish that in this video if you keep watching. But I was getting a little faster when I did the technique that I used in this video, which is I took Datto, I put him in mark mode, and I had him meet the opposing center automatically. So what happens is, if you play the game normally, you have your 2 midfielders and your center that just basically by default go forward. And your centers will obviously meet up naturally, but your wings will not, and your wings start a little further ahead of your center. So if you mark one of your wings, Datto in this case, in mark mode on the opposing center, he'll dive at the opposing center to start, And Datto, leveling him up. In fact, I've got him optimal on speed. He's like 92 speed, which means he's going to run into that guy really quick, which happens a bunch. And that means if he's able to get the ball from Vuroja, I believe is how you say his name, either he scores really quick, or if Letty meets him with you, Letty gets the ball and can score really quick, which is what happens. Now, a possibility, a team that I also fought against and managed to get 20 goals against was the Guado Glories. And their center, Nav, is really fast as well. And so I think Datto meeting up with Nav could be even quicker, not by much, but a little, such that I think you could maybe get 3 goals in a minute, a goal every 20 seconds. And so potentially the upper bound would be about 15 goals in a half, 30 goals in a game. So I think the realistic goal is 30 goals in a game, 15 goals in a half, which I obviously did not accomplish on this video, but this was my 3rd attempt at scoring as many goals against the weakest team immediately. As mentioned, the strategy employed was very, very first game that you're forced to play in, storyline, force that game into overtime repeatedly and level up your team over and over and over again, such that you get a level 99 Datto, and I think I got a level 77, or a level 99 Letty, and I think a level 77 Datto. You could level them both all the way up, but that would have taken like another 4 hours. I think it was 8 hours on and off over the past 3 weeks. I've just kind of, in my spare time, while, you know, watching The Mandalorian or whatever, been leveling. If I was a younger person, you know, I could have done like an all-night stream or something, but don't really have that in me. So level them up like that. You are able to restart the game as many times as you want to select who your very, very first opponent is. This is important because your opponents start leveling based on your level, something I'm going to look into more as I proceed along this. So make sure you get the Kilika Beast first. Set Datto as a wing and put him on mark mode on their center, Vuroja, and then have him go. Something I am going to attempt is I actually need to level up Datto a little more to get him in a place where he is actually capable of taking down Nav, which he is not at the moment. But, you know, it's one of those things I'll definitely work on and see that, because I would love to see if you get up to 30. But this is 23 goals in the very, very first legal game you are able to play in Final Fantasy X, which I think is probably an unofficial record. I know people have looked about this, but I think most people, what they usually do is wait till later in the game and grab Brother as your first person. And certainly there are techniques they've used to score, you know, 20 goals or whatever. But this is 23, very, very first legal game. Definitely going to keep investigating and also see, you know, if it's possible to get near that 30 mark if I do things right. So enjoy. I'll be back with more Blitzball strategy and fun. But as mentioned, for now, this was just a proof of concept.